I would like to introduce John Stern, and he is from Irvine. He runs the Irvine Museum, is the director there, and he's going to present to you a wonderful discussion about Hawaiian artists. I think you'll really enjoy it. So without further ado, John.
Thank you, Una. And welcome everybody. Thank you for being here. This is the 11th year of this event, and it's the 11th year that Linda, my wife, and I have been invited to the event. So we keep our fingers crossed that they'll keep inviting us. I'm going to talk this evening about historic artists of Hawaii, but before we start, I'd like to do a little tribute to one of our own who passed away just last month. This is Ken Oster. And we have in the audience Paulette Oster. Paulette, if you could. Paulette was Ken's lifelong companion and wife, and we're delighted that you're here, Paulette. But Ken was a regular here at the event, a charming man, a knowledgeable man. I first met Ken sometime about 1998, and I went to see an exhibit at the Laguna Museum. Next, please. And I realized that what I saw was an artist that did everyday, ordinary life. This is a traffic jam. And you may not know what a traffic jam is here. No, wait a minute, you do. But this is in San Francisco. And, you know, instead of what most so-called Impressionist artists did to paint, you know, ladies in parasols in some carriage somewhere, something they had never ever seen, he painted what was all around him. Next, please. What was beauty in everyday things. And I was immediately impressed that this guy found beauty in traffic jams. And I thought, you know, 100 years from now, they're going to say, Daddy, what is that? And here we are. This is what he painted. He was a remarkable artist. He knew how to paint. He knew why to paint. And he was a wonderful man. Next, please. He also did these gorgeous views of his hometown in Laguna Beach. Next, please. And then he did a series of restaurants, which, you know, artists are constantly seeking something new. They're never happy with what they're doing. And he went into a long series of these beautiful paintings. And this is, I was told, is in the Royal Hawaiian. But we're going to see some of that image in the historic artists that come later. Next, please. And then he's been here every year. This is the one that won Best in Show in 2013, this view of Maui with the view of Lahaina. So next, please. And then as I said, he would get out there and paint where people hardly painted. This was a year in 2014 where it rained a lot. Lahaina, I'm told, is a loose translation, the land of the relentless sun, the intense sun. And he paints it as the land of relentless sun, but it's in the rain. So he had a great sense of humor, and he taught classes. He was a popular teacher, and he was a man you went to when you wanted to know something, because he really studied his art and his craft. Next, please. So this is a picture of him in his messy way of working. Over the years, he's given me 2 of his paintbrushes. And these things are like dangerous weapons. I don't think he ever cleaned a paintbrush in his life. He just kept painting, and they built up layers and layers. And you see these things here, they got to be so thick that, you know, he told me, he said, keep it away from open flame. So, but that was Ken Oster, and remarkable artist. And we're going to be sorry. We miss him already, and he should have been here this year. Yeah. Yeah. Another friend of this organization also died recently. That was Ed Robinson, who was the general manager of the hotel. Since the beginning, he was the one who set up the chairs and served the wine, and he also passed away. So I just wanted to mention that. Somebody that's been part of the organization peripherally, but nevertheless, he was here every single time. Another person we will miss. Thank you. Okay, now, historic Hawaiian painters. I'm going to move over here. This is a lecture about artists that were in Hawaii, European artists, artists that, not native Hawaiian artists, but artists that came here through European. It's from European contact, which is when the Europeans first started coming to the islands to the mid-20th century. So you may ask, why would artists come to Hawaii? And the answer is, they were the official artists on expedition ships. And starting in the early 1700s, Europeans sent out expedition ships all over the world, but they started coming to the Pacific Islands in the early 1700s. This is a painting of the expedition ship Beagle. Now, it has nothing to do with Hawaii, but it's the one that Darwin was on. So why would they have an artist on an expedition ship? And the answer is they didn't have a photographer, because photography hadn't been invented. So the artist was there to record not only the birds, the animals, the plants, but the people. And all that was recorded and was taken back to the European country that launched the expedition. Usually these expeditions lasted 2 to 3 years, because it took that long to go from, say, England or France and tour essentially all the way around the world. So artists came to this area, to the Hawaiian Islands, originally this way. Next, please. And the very first European artist to paint in Hawaii was a man named John Weber, and he was here in 1778 and 1779. Next, please. Weber was an Englishman. He was the son of a sculptor, and he sailed on the third voyage of Captain Cook. It's the ill-fated voyage, meaning that Captain Cook was killed on that voyage. And he was the official artist and illustrator for the third voyage of Captain Cook. Next, please. Cook was here in January 1778, and he named it the Sandwich Islands. So for over 100 years, this area was called the Sandwich Islands, and that was in honor of one of his patrons, the people that sponsored the expedition, which was John Montagu, the Earl of Sandwich. Next. On February 14th, 1779, Cook got involved in a skirmish and was killed by the native Hawaiians. Weber did an engraving, The Death of Captain Cook, which became fantastically famous. And it was reproduced many, many times, and he became a very famous artist. And this is the engraving. Engraving was a way to produce an image in mass numbers. An engraving is in essence scratched onto a copper plate, and then the ink is poured into it, wiped clean, and then the paper is printed. So you can print large numbers off one plate before it gets flattened out too much, and then generally they rework the plate or they make another plate. This was copied by other artists. It was a big event, the death of Captain Cook, and Weber essentially got his reputation from this one image. Next, please. While he was here, Weber also did a lot of these topographical views, which is what they called them, and they were views of what the area looked like, because people in England, in this case, wanted to see what it looked like, wanted to see what the villages looked like, what the boats looked like, what the people wore, what the people ate, all those things. Those were all recorded. And this is a village on the Kona coast. Next, please. This is one in Kauai. And it was published as a view of Atui Sandwich Islands, 1778. and another one yet from his series on the exploration of Hawaii by Captain Cook. Next, please. The next artist is a French artist, Louis Chaury, and he was here in 1816. He too came as an artist illustrator. Next, please, Linda. He signed up on the Rurik, which came across around the Horn and went into the Pacific, actually went to California and painted in California, and also stopped in Hawaii. He was in Hawaii in 1816. When he returned, he published his findings and his images. He kept on exploring, and on March 22nd, in 1828, he was murdered near Veracruz on another expedition. Next, please. This is one of his California natives. These are the California Indians in Southern California. They do not look like the noble red men of the plains. They did not have horses. They did not hunt buffalo. They were rather peaceful. They lived off the land. They didn't even need agriculture. So he did a whole series of these mission Indians. By the time he got there, they were missionized. And then went on to Hawaii and did these magnificent views of Hawaiian rituals. Chaury did a large series of these plates. They are in French, but this is the man's dance. We see other artists that painted it. Next, please. And then this is the favored wife of Kamehameha I. So Kaahumanu, painted in 1816. I hope that wasn't an artist. Macario. Next, please. And this is the interior of one of the chief's house. So they did have houses. This is an important person. Lots of people in his household. It's a big house. There's windows, there's a fire. This is, as I say, if you didn't have a photographer, so you had to have somebody draw this and paint it and then later get it published. Next, please. The next person to come to Hawaii on the European expedition was Jacques-Étienne Victor Arago. All of you know I'm French, right? It's Jean. Jean, I'm the woman, Jean. So I can say all these things. But he came here in Hawaii in 1819 on another expeditionary ship. Next, please. And his ship was called the Uranie, or Uranus. He joined Louis de Freycinet's expedition, sailed around the world, stopped in Hawaii in 1819, and also when he returned, he published his book on travels. So these are works by Arago. Another view of the men's dance in Hawaii, Oahu, 1819. Next, please. And then one of the officers of Kamehameha II. Kamehameha I was the Hawaiian chief that united all the islands. And he started a dynasty, and there are several Kamehamehas, but Kamehameha I is the George Washington, the great hero of Hawaiian unity. So in 1819, Kamehameha II ruled from 1819 to 1824. Next, please. And then there's this wonderful painting of a baptism aboard the Uranie in 1819. It was an honorific thing to do, to baptize the baby of a high official, and everybody got dressed in their, parade best, and their important people got on the boat and they did the ceremony. The next artist is Robert Dampier. This is a British artist, and he painted in Hawaii in 1825. That's a self-portrait of the artist. Next, please. He was an artist and later became a clergyman. In 1819, he moved to Rio de Janeiro, Brazil, and worked there. And in 1825, the HMS Blonde, a British ship that was returning the bodies of Kamehameha II and his queen to Hawaii, because they had both died of measles when they were in England. They stopped to pick him up on the way to Hawaii because they needed an expedition artist. And he came to Hawaii, he spent 11 weeks in Hawaii and did numerous important scenes of island life. He was one of the first to paint the volcano. We're going to see a lot of paintings of the volcanoes because it became kind of a Hawaiian national art style to paint the volcanoes because they were very, very popular with the visitors and they sold very well. So there were a lot of artists that would begin painting the volcanoes and continue to paint the volcanoes up into the 1920s. Next, please. While he was here, he also did the next king, since he was bringing back the parents of Kamehameha III, who ruled quite a long time, 1825 to 1854. So this is the boy, the son, who suddenly became king because his parents died of measles when they were visiting England. The Hawaiian royalty were very fond of visiting England. There was a close tie between British royalty and Hawaiian royalty. The British were the ones who really settled and colonized Hawaii, and they named it Sandwich Islands, but they did continue to have the king and have all their officials, but they associated a lot with the royal family in England. So there are numerous voyages back and forth between the kings of Hawaii all the way into the 20th century. Next, please. And he also did other dignitaries and people in Hawaii. This is a Hawaiian woman, 1825. Next, please. This is the artist Titian Peale. He was the son of Charles Wilson Peale, who was a very well-known American painter. He had several sons, and he named them all after artists. There's Rubens Peale and Rembrandt Peale and Titian Peale. So I guess you were stuck. You were going to be an artist. But Papa had a museum in Philadelphia, a natural history museum, and young Titian worked there for a while and became an avid naturalist. So when he had the chance to join an expedition, next please, he did. He joined the expedition aboard the Peacock, which was an American exploration vessel, for 4 years, from 1838 to 1842, and it went throughout the South Pacific and stopped in Hawaii in 1842. Next, please. And lo and behold, he painted the volcanoes too. So this is Kilauea by day, but he did something very interesting that had never been done before. He did it at night. And it became the most popular way to paint the volcanoes was at night. So we're going to see a lot of volcanoes at night, and people loved these paintings. Visitors would buy them and take them back. Linda and I were staying with a friend who lives in Oahu. He has a collection of these historic Hawaiian paintings, and he had one of a volcano at night, and it came out of Stuttgart, Germany. So it ended up all the way in Germany, and now it's back in Hawaii. Next, please. The next artist is James Gay Sawkins, and he was in Hawaii from 1850 to 1852. So we still have people that are visiting. Next, please. And he was an English-born artist, but grew up in Maryland, lived in Cuba, and then came to Hawaii 1850 and stayed for a couple of years. Now, he painted right here in Lahaina. And he did some wonderful paintings, which I will show you. And then he returned to England and had a nice long life there. Next, please. This is Sawkins. It's Hilo, which is on Oahu. Hilo from the Bay in 1852. And this is a painting. Sorry, I'm a tourist. You guys know I'm a tourist. I'm sorry. Big Island. Next, please. Here we go. This is Honolulu. This is not by him, but it's a copy of one of his paintings. It got destroyed, but there existed a copy. This is when you should have bought that lot there in Waikiki. Sorry you missed it. Next, please. And then here we are in Lahaina. So this is right here. It's probably right out front of the hotel. If you look to the left, you'll see that cleft in the hills. And it's Lahaina. Kanapali? Oh, I got some artists here that are arguing with me that it's Kaanapali.
Yeah, 'cause that's how you see the mountains from there.
It's here in Lahaina. Next, please. Okay, is this Kaanapali? No, this is Lahaina. Anyway, the Presbyterian Church, which I don't think exists anymore. Would somebody like to comment on that? I don't think so. But one of the most interesting things that Sawkins painted while he was in Hawaii was, next, surfing. So you notice the women are surfing too. Next, please. The next artist, Enoch Wood Perry, was the son of an American artist. He came to Hawaii in 1864 to visit his cousin, Daniel Dole, of the family that would eventually have the Dole pineapple, who had been here as missionaries. He traveled to many of the islands, and he did posthumous portraits. Kamehameha the Fourth had died a year before he got here, but he did a portrait of Kamehameha the Fourth, and then he did one of Albert Kamehameha, who would have been Kamehameha the Fifth, but he died a couple years even earlier. Next, please. So this is Enoch Wood Perry, again, of Waikiki, a diamond head from Waikiki. Again, you should have bought that lot, but never mind. Next, please. And then here's one right here on Maui, the Rose Ranch. So we're getting more and more professional artists. These are not explorers anymore. By this time, by the 1860s, these are professional artists that are coming to Hawaii. They've been trained in Europe, and they paint these magnificent paintings. Many of these paintings can be seen at the Honolulu Museum. So if you get a chance to visit, go there. They have a wonderful collection. Next, please. And then this is the posthumous portrait of the young prince who died. It would have been Kamehameha the Fifth. Next, please. Joseph Strong lived in Honolulu as a child and moved to California. He was a painter in San Francisco where he met and befriended another artist that we're going to see in a minute named Jules Tavernier. Strong married the daughter of Robert Louis Stevenson's wife and ended up traveling with them. They lived in Samoa for a couple of years. Then they moved to Hawaii. And while he was in Hawaii, he was commissioned by John Spreckels to paint some of the scenes of the island. He did return to San Francisco in 1895 and died there. I can only show you one painting, and it's a magnificent painting. It's the Japanese laborer on the sugar plantation of Spreckelsville. But we're dealing with, large, important paintings that are being produced by these artists. Next, please. The man that Strong was painting with in San Francisco was Jules Tavernier, who actually was son of an English artist born in Paris. He was here from 1884 to 1889. Next. Tavernier is one of the really colorful artists of the period because he liked to party. And in San Francisco, he and Strong partied and partied. They had notoriously big parties. He ran up a huge bill, and he had to leave San Francisco to escape his creditors. This was Tavernier. And he came to Hawaii because Strong had come to Hawaii. So he said, maybe I should come to Hawaii too, and he did. And he got fascinated by the volcanoes, and he's the first artist to really paint the volcanoes as a major subject, and he's considered the founder of the Hawaiian Volcano School. That's the name of the group of artists that painted the volcano. He ran up huge debts in Hawaii, but they wouldn't allow him to leave unless he paid his debts. And he never did. He died in Honolulu in 1889. One of his students we're going to see later was an artist named David Howard Hitchcock. So this is Jules Tavernier, and of course, he's the founder of the Volcano School, and he loved to paint these at night. They're very dramatic, and they're fascinating paintings. Next. This is Kilauea at night with the moon in the distance. This is a daylight scene. It's a very beautiful small painting that's at the Honolulu Museum. Sunrise over Diamond Head, 1888. Really lovely little painting. Next, please. And more. Tavernier is noted as one of the important painters of California. He was one of the founders of the Bohemian Club in San Francisco and has a great reputation in California. Other than a party giver, he's also wonderful paintings. Next, please. And look at this little thing. Linda and I were in Honolulu looking at a collector's, and they took us to a dealer. And on the wall was this beautiful little painting of the Maui sugar plant in 1885. And that's what it looked like when it was first built. And I asked the guy, do you mind if I take a picture so I can use it in a lecture? He said, no, go right ahead. So the wonders of using your phone to take a picture, and the next day it's in a lecture in Kauai, Hawaii. Next, please. This is David Hitchcock. Now, he was the first one of these artists that was born in Hawaii, and he was a friend of Tavernier. Next, please. And he was the grandson of missionaries, and he met Tavernier when Hitchcock was painting a watercolor of the volcanoes. And Tavernier was very impressed by young Hitchcock's paintings and advised him to go to Paris and to study there, which he did. And he returned and lived his entire life in Hawaii. But he became the most famous artist of Hawaii in his day. This is in the teens up to, he died in 1943, but most of his important work is in the teens, 20s, and early 30s. And as an older man, he had witnessed the attack. He was in Pearl Harbor when the Japanese attacked, and he died in Honolulu in 1943. This is one of his early paintings of the volcanoes. This is when he was painting with Tavernier. They look a lot like Tavernier. In fact, he had said in his writings that Tavernier would start a painting and then abandon it and tell Hitchcock to finish it. And he would sign it. He would sign it Tavernier. So he knew how Tavernier liked to paint. Next, please. But he also did these gorgeous views of Hawaiian life. The canoes, the houses, mornings, the really wonderful paintings. Next, please. Royal Palm, Moana Lua. These are all Hitchcock. Next, please. Forgive me if I don't start pronouncing some of these names. Paleuna from Waiine, 1909. So you see, he's a very accomplished artist. He's come back from study in Europe, and he knows how to paint. Next, please. This is Honolulu Harbor, 1920. Next, please. And then this gorgeous, beautiful large painting. This is 1925. Do we have another? Oh, Kailua Bay from Lanikai. (1932). Next. And then one of his later paintings, you can see they're getting different. They're getting more structured, more outlined. So Hitchcock, the first one to actually been born in Hawaii. Then Lionel Walden, born in Connecticut. He went to Paris, learned how to paint, returned to the United States, first visited Hawaii in 1911, and returned many times. And he died in France. He was well known in France. He had exhibited For several years in the French Salon, he was made a Chevalier of the Legion of Honor. So very good painter, very well-known artist, and did a lot of his work in Hawaii. Next, please. Here's waterfalls in Oahu. 1916. But his favorite views were of the ocean and in moonlight. He loved to paint the ocean, especially at night. He loved to paint from the back of a ship. I'm going to show you a couple of those wake of the ship type paintings. Moonlight 1920, Night Fisherman. This is a small painting. Next, please. And this is a large one. This is the wake of a ship. Next, please. This is one of his most famous paintings, Torchlight Fisherman, Waikiki, 1920. Reproduced in a lot of books. The torch attracts the fish, and the fisherman spears the fish. Simple, right? Next, please. And Theodore Wars was a San Francisco painter. He painted in Hawaii in 1901 and came back again in 1913. Next, please. He was a world traveler. His base was in San Francisco. He was a member of the Bohemian Club, but he painted in Japan. He was there for 3 years and then returned again. He came to Hawaii and then went on to Samoa. He actually survived the San Francisco earthquake, but the fire that followed destroyed everything he owned. He came to Hawaii in 1913, was here for a couple years, and then went on to Taos, and he died in San Francisco. Next, please. This was painted in 1901 on his first trip, Hawaiian house. And then perhaps his most famous painting is this one, which is in the Honolulu Museum, The Laymaker, 1901. It's a beautiful painting. Do go, it's on display. If you go to Honolulu, go to the museum. It's closed on Mondays. And then his beautiful little sketch. Looks like the kind of work our artists do. Next, please. Armand Manoukian was born in Istanbul. It was then called Constantinople. He painted in Hawaii from 1927 to actually to 1931. That's a mistake, I'm sorry. He died in 1931. So next, please. He was Armenian, and he left Turkey to escape persecution. He went to art school in New York. Then he joined the Marine Corps for 4 years and got stationed in Hawaii, and he loved Hawaii. He stayed on afterwards. He was an artist for the Honolulu Star Bulletin from 1927 till he died. He died in 31. The date's wrong. In 1929, Helene Fagan, the wife of the Hana Ranch founder, purchased 7 paintings for their ranch on Molokai. Those paintings, many of those ended up at the Hana Maui Hotel, and they were there from 1947 to 2010. They became very famous. They were in a dining room, and then the hotel was sold and the paintings were sold. Manoukian committed suicide in 1931 in Honolulu. He had fallen in love with a married woman, and he just decided he couldn't live, and he drank some film developing fluid and died. It's hard to be an artist. Next, please. These are some of the sketches he did. A very good painter. Did a lot of military subjects because he was in the Marines. But what he's best known for are these gorgeous Hawaiian paintings. This is a small painting, early Hawaiian explorers, but he is in fact an Art Deco painter. He's not an impressionist. Right now, up to now, we've seen a lot of impressionists and a lot of realist painter. But an Art Deco changes. The artist changes the way they work to create a more interesting, a more dazzling, uses colors to bolder effects, uses line, a very active line, lots of detail, and the artist wants to dazzle your eye with detail, color, line, and all sorts of beautiful things. Next, please. This is one of his famous paintings, one from the hotel in Hana, Men in an Outrigger Canoe, 1925. A painting of Honolulu, 1928. So they're not real direct paintings. The artist takes a lot of liberties but creates a really dazzling, a very effective image. Next, please. Another famous painting that also from the hotel, Red Sails, 1928. And then this one. When we were visiting the collector friends in Lanikai, turns out he has this in his living room. The young guy on the right is me. So it was a very interesting trip, and John Dilks, he and his wife Patty own the paintings, and they also have the one of Red Sails, which I showed earlier. They took us all over to see collectors and the museums, and it was a wonderful event. Next, please. Eugene Savage was a muralist, and next, please. He was actually teaching painting. He worked for the WPA. He did a lot of murals, and he was also an Art Deco painter. And in 1935, he was in Florida, focusing on the Seminole Indians and how they dealt with the intrusion of tourism, the destruction of the Garden of Eden. So he had this preoccupation in his mind to paint these things. And this is one of his Florida paintings. And it shows a Seminole mother and baby in ceremonial traditional garb, regalia, and surrounded by the tourist industry, and how their life is being changed. And the Garden of Eden becomes a Garden of Eden for the tourists, but it is no longer a Garden of Eden for the original settlers. And there's another one of these from that Florida series. I assume the crocodile is modern civilization, but he had a very specific point of view about this. But this is the Art Deco style. A lot of stylized form, a lot of detail, a lot of brilliant colors. In 1938, he was commissioned by the Matson Navigation Company in Oakland to paint murals on the Hawaiian theme. And they were going to use them on their cruise ships, the Lurleen, the Matsonia. And for 2 years he worked on a series of 4-foot by 8-foot murals, which were completed late in 1940. And there were plans to put them on board the Lurleen and the Matsonia, but war broke out with the bombing of Pearl Harbor, and all the cruise ships were converted to troop ships. And they remained that way during the war. At the end of the war, the cruise ships were reinstated, but the company decided to use the murals for their menu covers. And they're very famous murals because they're reproduced a lot in the menus. Everybody who took those ships after the war brought home the menu covers. They're a series of 4 I'm going to show you. This is one of them. And they were finished in 1940. Here's another one. Again, this is Art Deco. Lots of bright colors. It's meant to dazzle your eye with interesting color and exotic subject matter. Next, please. Now, we've all seen these, and if you don't think you've ever seen one, I'm wearing a shirt that has them. So, and these murals were in storage for years, but then about 4 years ago, they were installed at the Honolulu Museum. sorry, 2 years ago. But see how big they are. They're quite sizable. Next, please. Okay, now for the important artists in this lecture. These are the Best in Show winners for the last 10 years. And I have been the judge for every one of those 10 years. And I keep complaining that we need to invite some incompetent painters so it can make my choice easier. And what do? They just keep upping the quality. So I don't know what I'm going to do this year. But if you got a chance to see those little miniatures in the exhibit, you're going to love to see the bigger paintings when they're painted. So here we go, the Best in Show 2006. Randy Sexton, are you here, Randy? Over here. 2007, Jacobus Baas, who is not here, but 2008, somebody, I don't know, Ronaldo. Ronaldo's right here. 2009, Billy O'Donnell's not here this year. 2010, George Allen. George, are you here? Yeah, he's here. He's here. He's not in the competition, but he is here. He knew I was going to show the painting, so he had to come. 2011, Clark Mitchell's here. He's here this year. Wow, he's right here behind me. This is a pastel, by the way. And pastels are beautiful. They're gorgeous things. And when you can paint like this, you know, I know a couple of really great pastel painters, Clark and one or two others. And sometimes they ask me, should I be painting in oil? I say, hell no. You know, you're this good, stay with it. 2012, Carlton Kincaid. Right here. 2013 was Ken Oster, Paulette. 2014, again, Randall Sexton. Now this is a sugar plant that we saw in that painting by Tavernier in 1885. And it is closing down. So there are a few artists that went and painted this. So you may get a chance to buy an important painting and take it home of the sugar plant. And then last year, 2015, Yu Lai Chong. So 2016, stay tuned. One more slide. One more slide. All right.